Let me thank the finance minister. In fact, yesterday, I could walk with my shoulders up and my confidence regained once again. And I'm sure if you had watched the approval ratings on the streets of Accra and many parts of the country, you realize that citizens of this country were actually happy with what the finance minister came to do. In fact, this is just in line with Section 28 of the PMF Act 921/2016, with the intention that, especially when there's issues of global uncertainties, issues of revenue shortfalls, or major policy shift in terms of tax revenues or taxes, that is what normally occasions policy reviews. So Dr. Ato Forson brought another perspective that we haven't seen in a while, that a new year, especially in the difficulties that the country is faced, especially at the time that we took office, is not introducing many more difficulties on the citizenry. So for me, in fact, people should have seen it coming, because the budget preparation was preceded by National Economic Forum and the visit to Makola and other markets to seek the views of the ordinary Ghanaians. So it was actually the people's budget. The motivation for Ato Forson was that how do we do to make sure that the cost of living crisis that as a country we were facing is reduced, price of goods and services on the decline, and make sure that the exchange rate is stable for business community to have that level of planning. So based on what he did yesterday, I was very happy. In fact, we have been on this journey identifying the various challenges that he inherited and also the positive gains that we were seeing. So I'm not going to repeat some of the problems that we inherited from the NPP as he did yesterday. But the first thing that we must commend the government for is that, look, first half of the year, in fact, we expected an end year projected GDP inflation at 18%, 15%. Currently, from 23.8% end year 2024 inflation, we are currently around 13.7%.
In 15 was 11.9. Any inflation is 11.9.
Good. And we are currently doing 11.7 in half year. Or 13.7.
It's 13.
13.7.
You're actually targeting to do 11.7 by the end of the year.
So the expectation is that very soon, I am more than confident in the projections that we are, yes, they are still hovering around 11.9. But I will not be surprised that if Dr. Ato Forson takes us to single digit, considering the rate at which almost 10% drop in the inflation of our country. In fact, producer price is even currently around 8.8% in this country. Cedi, we've talked about it. And look, despite all these gains that Dr. Ato Forson mentioned yesterday, it was not greeted with a kinky party. It was not greeted with cake sharing and all those things. We saw that level of, he spoke to the hearts of people. In fact, I received calls from people that said that they almost felt emotional listening to Dr. Ato Forson. In fact, look at the sentiment he released into the forex market, saying that we must prioritize our currency. The currency should be a symbol of national pride. We must do business with our currency. It's a symbol of our republic. There is no other currency that is acceptable to us than the Ghana cedi. And I think that this was a good message in terms of sensitivity analysis. Then social intervention. Look, I was proud also. And that's where I saw every MP giving Dr. Ato Forson a standing ovation, where he said for the next 4 years, annually 10 kilometers of roads will be given to 166 constituencies. The rest, most of them are metropolis that are getting other road infrastructure. The Big Push program captured, detailed a lot of them on page 33. And I'm sure those viewing can go through some of the beneficiary communities. More are contained in the main one. What I just wanted to rather say is that
the funding for the Big Push agenda is ready.
Yeah, it's ready. 13.85 billion. In fact, that is what is even President Mahama's priority. Because we are of the view that we must make this country an enviable trade hub for Africa. Because look, if you look at the AFTA program we signed in Accra in 2017, the expectation was that by 2020, Africa trade intensity and coverage among African countries should have increased to 50%. Right now, Africa is still doing 17%. So what it simply tells you is that there exists a market that African countries can trade, especially considering these global supply disruptions we are seeing. There are political tensions in many other countries, and also Donald Trump trade policies and monetary policy stance. So it means that it presents an opportunity for us to lead this drive towards increasing trade participation in Africa. To do that, we need to open up the economy. That's why you heard yesterday of the Volta Economic Zone and the Northern Economic Zone, to open up the country to neighbors like Togo, Cote d'Ivoire, and that of Burkina Faso to support the 24-hour economy. But
to do all of this in 2 years, I'm talking the 166 constituencies, the roads, networks that you intend to...
No, not in 2 years, in 4 years.
In 4 years.
The 2 years
the big
old
push.
are just the big push.
For the big push.
The third year is going into the agriculture for economic transformation agenda.
Okay.
And then the other one will go into other sectors. Which
So the big push is different from the
10 kilometers.
The 10 kilometers
yes.
per 160 constituency.
Yes, that's different.
Okay.
So now...
You carry on.
No. Yes. So now if you look at overall, I'm looking at it from the extended performance. And it is happy to know that Ghana, as we speak, is allowed once again into the capital market. Though the intention is to borrow responsibly so that we don't go back to the fiscal distress. But the point must be made that based on the fiscal consolidation effort of this government and other Bank of Ghana interventions, Ghana, in terms of world outlook, has been given high ratings. If you look at the S&P and Fitch ratings, it enables us for investors to have confidence in the country once again. And currently, we are in the process of selecting book runners that will assist Ghana in terms of getting cheaper external facilities. Now, interest rate performance. Look, one of the critical things that stifles industrial growth is cost of credit. And in fact, in advanced democracies, interest on commercial loans are around 1%, 2%, and all those things. But Ghana level, or they call it the Ghana reference rate, that is the policy rate in the country plus some margin of risk premium. We inherited a Ghana reference rate of 29%.
Yeah.
And in fact, at the commercial lending rate in some banks was about 33% and 34%. Currently, the Ghana reference rate has declined to 24%, though we still have around 29% as interbank rate. But the expectation is that this must come down further to increase trade participation, because the 24-hour economy is largely private.
You know what surprises me about the Ghana reference rate?
Yes.
To think that if you look at the indices that goes into computing it, so
Yes.
you're looking at the interbank rates, treasury bill rates, and I believe there's one other one.
Yeah.
All these ones have tumbled.
Yes.
They've all gone down.
Yes.
So what then explains why the
So
Ghana reference rate is still at the level at which they are? Something doesn't add up.
It doesn't add up.
I will address that. Let him finish.
Yes.
I will address that.
Something doesn't add up.
Yes, so it's the risk premiums that is still a challenge. Okay. But despite these marginal gains that we are seeing in terms of commercial lending rate,
yes,
you can see that in the report, in fact, access to credit or credit has gone up by about 30% over the last 6 months.
Yes.
So that is comforting.
But would it also be because NPLs are still very high?
Yes.
I'm talking about non-performing.
Yes, so these are some of the reforms that I think that we must pursue as a country to make sure that, and I like one of the things that I like about what the MPP wanted to do was the credit score system.
Yeah.
I think that we have to pursue something like that in the future. So for me, if you look at the amount of work that has been done in terms of the interest rate development, it gives us more hope that once we make the ease of doing business favorably in Ghana, private sector can participate fully. Okay. Then monetary and financial sector development. Let's tell the story of the NIB. My brother, not to come at you, but the truth of the matter is that we had spent about 30.3 billion Ghana cedis saving banks. We had spent about 30.3 billion Ghana cedis to save banks. National Investment Bank and Agricultural Development Bank are state enviable banks.
Yes.
If you look at currently the capital adequacy ratio of banks, is expected around 14%. That is just the conservation ratio above the minimum requirement of 10%. So it's around 14% now. So every bank must maintain a capital adequacy ratio of 14 and above.
Yes.
and you have an NIB bank that is doing capital adequacy ratio of negative 53%, despite we spending 30.3 billion Ghana cedis.
The money is gone to waste.
Number two, the total amount of money that government has so far spent on NIB is only 1.4 billion Ghana cedis. And the expectation is that NIB will turn around. In fact, over the last 6 months, the thing has moved from a negative capital adequacy ratio to a positive 23%. Look at the sharp reverse. And in fact, they had increased salaries of all NIB workers across the country, which they haven't done for over 9 years. So the story of NIB gives me hope that if we really prioritize our national priority projects, we can go somewhere. And next is CBJ. You know, the CBJ came as a result of amalgamation of several defunct banks. And it is now having a huge portfolio. But as to what we should use those portfolio for, government needs to do something to make sure that we increase local participation in the banking industry. Currently, remove the national bank like GCB, NIB, and the rest. How many Ghanaian-owned banks do we have in our financial sector? I think this should be a cause of concern. Credit to private sector, like I said, is 31%. But I will land on where is my the public debt issue, public debt development. Look, we must commend Dr. Ato Forson. I remember I was on one studio last 2 years with Honorable Kojo Ponkurma, and he was explaining that a lot of the Akufo-Addo's debt was as a result of the exchange differentials. What it simply means is that you can borrow $100 billion today at a rate of 10 cedis. If the cedi is not performing, it goes to 12 cedi. Even though you haven't added new debt, but your cost of repayment will increase as a result of the exchange differentials. Now, because of the management of the exchange rate, we inherited a total debt of 726 billion we had always maintained. But it has just fallen sharply to about 600 and something billion, a decline of 113 billion. We inherited a debt to GDP ratio of 61%. Now it's hovering around 48%. What it simply means is that Ghana is almost now equipped to pay all our debts and still have some reserves. So for me, this
means that the appreciation of the city has done some serious magic.
Some serious magic. And largely it's as a result of the Gold Board and the Bank of Ghana interventions. But finally, I also want to thank him, aside the projects he mentioned, the humility. That we are not out of these problems yet.
Yes.
And that is what I also want to learn with. That, yes, it won't be too factual to have just generalized the entire 2025 performance to what we heard yesterday. This is just an accountability tool that measures past performance and gives an indication of where the direction we want to go. The best measure will be when we are dealing with the 2026 annual report. That will tell us the outcomes for this year. But my happiness is that we have always maintained that honesty in government communication always bring up public trust in public institutions. And the wage bill is an issue, and he outlined that. And then we still have a lot of state-owned enterprises debt, Cocoa Board and the rest, which is still there. Bank of Ghana still have about 53 billion negative equity on their books. These are some of the fiscal risks that is still stable, that can still push us back to where we came from. So with these few words on the way forward, I think that's what I would say about it.